And soon enough, people just started calling me saying, hey, have you done this river? And have you done that river? And that's how we started. I mean, I wasn't smart enough to come up with a business plan, or, I didn't have an MBA. I just started paddling and people started paying me to take them paddling places. And we've kind of maintained that the whole way. We don't spend a bunch in advertising. It's just word of mouth. And our business is basically treated as taking our friends paddling.
Hi, I'm Reed Singh, and this is Adventure Travel with Trip Outside, a podcast where we interview adventurers, local guides, and outdoor industry experts to uncover the best travel spots and human-powered adventures from around the globe. Before we jump in, I have a quick favor to ask you, that if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It would truly mean a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg, for joining us from Adventures in Florida. You guys are a true inspiration of the outfitting business that provides something for everyone, and why you started the company. So I'm really excited to dig in and learn more about you, your original beginnings, and all the experiences that you offer. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So just quick overview of where you're located. You have so many different experiences all around Florida, and then some expeditions and lodge-based trips too. Can you give us a quick background into all the different experiences that you guys offer?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Adventures in Florida is actually 3 companies. It's Adventures in Florida, which specializes in week-long expeditions to about 18 different countries, mostly in the U.S. and, of course, in Florida. But we also do day tours for the Orlando visitor, mostly manatees, dolphins, of course, alligators. And then in the summer months, we do bioluminescence. Then we also have an outfitter shop on the Econ River and the wild and scenic Wekiva River. And both those shops are just traditional outfitting for rentals, shuttles, instruction, and some tours. And we've
Amazing.
been going since 1994.
So you have so many outfittering options, rentals, tours, and the multi-day adventures. What do most people come to find you as, and take? What's the most popular trip that you guys offer?
So in the summer months, our most popular tour is our bioluminescence tour, which is a nighttime tour. When it warms up and the pH of the water is right and the salinity is right, the bioluminescence in the Indian River Lagoon really lights up. So anything in the water that moves glows in the dark. So of course that's hugely popular because there's a lot of visitors here in the summer, and it's really nice out at night compared to the daytime. And then in the winter months, it would be our manatee tours. We do a trip called the Orlando Manatee Encounter, and we base it out of Blue Spring State Park. And on an average day, we'll have an encounter with 400 to 600 manatees. So
Wow.
in the spring and in the spring and the fall is when everything's in bloom. So that's when we do most of our week-long tours here in Florida.
That's amazing. And the bioluminescence, isn't it true that it only happens, that phenomenon, in only a few parts of the world?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay,
Puerto Rico
what
is very
causes it?
famous for it. It's a diaflagellant, and when it's agitated, its defense mechanism makes it glow. And it's a huge bloom of it, and it travels. We operate out of several locations, so we can follow it. You don't want to stay in just one location every night to offer your tour, because some nights it's really, really bright, and then other nights it's not so bright. So we'd like to travel with it, find it, and it's a pretty amazing experience. And we always let our guests swim. So that's a huge hit when people get to jump off their kayaks and swim and glow in the dark.
That sounds incredible. I know we have some outfitters in Puerto Rico that offer this. And that was going to be one of my questions, is it year round or specific times a year? And if somebody being me, was really interested in coming and experiencing what you just explained, is there like a peak month time frame where near Orlando where you could go experience this at night?
Yeah, you bet. August and September, the hottest 2 months of the year, are the best time to go. and you want to go on the hottest day possible, and you want to go on a night where it hasn't rained.
Got it. That's great.
Yeah, rain will diminish it a little bit.
Okay. And I think that's a great option because Florida, as you know, during the summer is probably not a great time to be outdoors unless you really love humidity and heat. But this is a great offering for the summer that allows you to kind of offer something all year round.
Yeah, it's beautiful at night in the summertime.
And the manatees, I can't believe how many manatees you can expect to see on a tour. Is it just like an area where it's like a starting or ending destination for them
Yeah,
during their migration?
it is. It's their winter home. So manatees die off at around 65 degrees. So when the ocean starts cooling, they come up our rivers and they go to our springs. And most of our springs are between 68 and 72 degrees all year. So it's just basically for survival. They go in there and they huddle up and they just stay warm during the winter time. And what's really amazing is when Jacques Cousteau came to Blue Spring in the early 70s, there's like 3 or 4 manatees making that their winter home. And now we have upwards to 600 manatees there, which is incredible because the population of Florida has doubled like 3 or 4 times since the 1970s. So even with human population exploding, the manatees population is going up also.
Well, that's really incredible and pleasant to hear because every other species you keep hearing about the opposite impact and the decline in populations. Uh,
Right.
what do you contribute most of that to? Is it environmental efforts or their
Oh
resilience?
yeah, the survival of the manatee was definitely the Endangered Species Act. They should get full credit for it. They've done a really wonderful job.
That's awesome. And then when you're paddling with them, are there uh, if if you're on a tour, I'm sure you guide people through like how to not disrupt them. But what are some things to know if someone is interested in paddling with manatees? What are some ways to protect them or not disrupt their behavior?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things is don't travel in large groups. We tell people to avoid if there's a lot of people, don't paddle there. We tell people not to use outfitters if they're overwhelming the wildlife by having a superfluous amount of participants on the water. And when you do encounter manatees, you should give them 25 feet. Some people say 50 feet. And if the manatee want to approach you, that's wonderful. Let them approach you. But it is against state and federal law to actually pursue a manatee. So if you see manatees, you can't just like kayak up and go right up to them. A lot of people don't recognize that. And what happens is you can separate a calf from their mother. So it's best just
Oh,
to
that's
keep a distance. It's like alligators, keep a distance.
sure. Oh no, that's a
Right.
great point. I think uh, knowing the impact of what could happen is separating the calf from the mother. The why behind it is easier to get people to get behind the reason. Like, of course, nobody wants to do that, and we're all a little bit guilty of seeing some wildlife and just trying to get as close as possible for the picture. Uh, but here it sounds like you're going to get an opportunity to see a manatee, so you don't need to stress out about it. I know we've
No,
definitely taken some paddles in Florida where you're paddling around. Maybe you're lucky to see one, maybe you're not, and your instinct is to kind of paddle along with it so you can get more glimpses. But thank you for sharing those tips.
yeah. Like I said, the easiest thing to do is when there's that many manatees, like when you're going up to when they're uh, in their winter zones, if you just sit still and just hang out in the middle of the river, they'll come to you. They're very curious mammals. And then when you're paddling along away from where they're all at the refuge, they go out and feed in the warm parts of the day. So they're popping up all around you, eating the spatterdock and the uh, sorry, duckweed, all the vegetation on top of the water. So the whole time that you're paddling, they're popping up around you feeding. So you have lots of
That's
opportunity to see.
awesome.
Yeah.
And then are these springs in these areas? Are there boats in these same rivers? Are they impacting your paddling experience or hurting the manatees? Because I know there's different wake zones, no wake zones in different areas that allow uh, these creatures to really survive and thrive.
Right. The only known predator to a manatee is a powerboat. almost all of the deaths of manatee can be attributed to power boats and irresponsible users of power boats. The refuges are buoyed off, so you can't paddle up to the actual refuge area, which is good because, you know, these mammals are stressed out. You know, they're trying to survive from freezing to death, so they're huddling in these warm waters. So they need to be left alone. So the state and the feds, they definitely rope these areas off. And anywhere there's a large manatee population, like on a navigable river, there are wake zones for no wake, minimal wake, and most boaters adhere to the law.
Well, that's great to hear, because when we are paddling, or what I've seen in the past is you're paddling around, you see manatee, and they're by far almost every time you see scars on their back, and it's just painful to see. But I feel inspired that there's things put in place and all the environmental effort that's being done, and in general that their population is increasing, so I can paddle a little bit more in peace. And I feel like just by getting people out there and getting them to paddle and see these animals, they'll work towards protecting them in the future.
Oh, absolutely. Anybody that kayaks out or snorkels out and actually has an interaction or an experience with a manatee, that's somebody that will be a advocate for manatees and manatee protection for the rest of their life. It's a touching moment.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. You did mention something around swimming around in the bioluminescent times to see that. My first thought goes to, aren't there alligators in the water? And how do you fish that?
Not traditionally, because alligators are a freshwater species, and the bioluminescence is in brackish water, so they avoid the salt. And we're far enough north that there's no crocodiles. In the 30 years we've been doing bioluminescence tours, maybe a half dozen times we've seen alligators. But alligators, sharks, and things of that nature, they don't represent a problem because they glow in the dark. They're not going to sneak up on you. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything out there is highly visible.
And another great thing is it is brackish water. I was thinking this experience, the bioluminescence, happened towards in freshwater, but that makes sense that it happens in brackish because it moves through the oceans, seems like.
Right.
Great. And I'm sure people do swim with alligators, because I've seen, you know, in different paddles where you're just like, oh, there's an alligator. And then around the corner, there's like a kid swimming around that's obviously a native to Florida. To Florida. So I'm sure
you're like, why is there a rope swing
there? Yeah, exactly. Are you trying to make it easy for the alligator to catch you?
Right. It's unbelievable the things you see.
Yeah. Your expeditions, by the way, are absolutely phenomenal. And I forget the count that you just mentioned about your number of countries that you offer these in. But, you know, a quick view of, you pretty much have all the epic paddling destinations covered. Can you walk us through some of your your personal favorite trips? And then we'll obviously have a link to these in the show notes in the podcast. The Okefenokee Swamp, Boundary Waters we're very familiar with. But what are some of the different trips that you could do an expedition, and what defines an expedition versus just a tour?
Sure. Well, first of all, I always tell people that my favorite expedition is the next one. I'm always looking forward to the next time I get to go out.
Love it.
Yeah, but some of my favorites, I used to like cold water, and a lot of sea kayakers are drawn to like Prince William Sound and places like that. It is beautiful, but being from Florida, I really like warm. So
Yeah.
My favorite places for the expeditions would be like the Exuma Islands of the Bahamas. I like Ometepe in Nicaragua and kayaking in Lake Nicaragua. We used to do a lot of tours on the South Island in New Zealand. Really love those. And recently we've been doing river tours on the Dordogne in France. I'm backing away from those and giving them to somebody else because of how much weight I gain every time I do that trip. And we've been working for 2 years, going to Southeast Asia, trying to set some things up, but we're having a hard time tailoring our expedition to the needs and desires of our guests. So we're always working on something.
Absolutely. I'm sure it takes so much effort in, scoping and planning a new place between permits and local, national requirements. What can how does it work? Like you just show up and everything else is taken care of for you
So,
for the expedition?
yeah. So first of all, the difference between we have week-long tours that we call lodge-based tours, and then we have expeditions. Basically, the only difference is on an expedition, you're camping. It's remote. There's usually not cell service. There's not facilities as far as like toilets and running water. So it's very backcountry, very basic. Uh, yeah, no cell service. That's the big thing. And a lot of people won't travel without that nowadays. And then our other week-long trips we stay at bed and breakfasts. We stay at farm stays. We avoid all hotels at all costs or any chain hotels. So basically it's the lodging difference and your
Sure.
access to the front country.
And that's the lodge tour, right?
Right. Lodge tours are not so deep into the back country. I
Okay.
describe the lodge tour as like 6 hours of paddling on the water, followed by a really good happy hour, maybe a wine tasting or a beer pairing, followed by a really good dinner.
Oh man, when can I come?
Right. Where the expedition is, make camp, dig a cat hole, sit around the fire, and wait till the guides feed you.
Yeah. Actually, I enjoy both. And I
Yeah.
think
Oh, yeah.
for most people, they're probably seeking that comfort and like do it all for me. I just want to sit at the lodge. But there's something to that expedition experience and truly unplugging when not just one day without service, 2 days, 3 days. And I think what you end up gaining out of that experience is so much more than giving up your cell phone for a few days and feeling uh, like you're missing out. So I think if anyone is listening and you haven't done either start with one day, but maybe a multi-day, truly unplugged, service-less experience, I highly recommend it. And I don't know how you stand on that, Greg, but that's what I'm always dreaming about doing that I don't get an opportunity to do enough.
Oh, yeah. And I also highly recommend that if you're going to do that, bring somebody young with you. We're seeing a disappearance of young people in the backcountry completely unplugged.
That's a great call. That's a great call. And then for them to actually experience life, and I think some of us have had life experiences where we didn't own a cell phone, didn't have a tablet or a device all the time. So we still have that life experience and knowing what that's like so we can tap back into it. But bringing some on, they don't even know that there is a possibility of life without being connected digitally. So that's such a great call out.
Right. Yep.
So if you're visiting Orlando and you want to get out, like what is the process? Do you guys have a location, or since the tours meet at different places, if somebody's down for a conference or Universal Studios, Disney World, different things, then I would love to encourage them to go out and take a paddle and find some wildlife in and around the city. Where do you guys meet? How does that process go?
Yeah, sure. So all of our tours meet in different locations. If somebody is in a large group of 10 or more, we can do transportation or arrange transportation. But most of our guests meet us at the launch point. On our website, we have Google Maps and directions to get exactly to those launch locations. That's the
Got it.
easiest way. And there's probably 24 launch locations that we utilize within an hour of Disney and the attractions.
Oh, that's amazing.
And
And
the good thing is, right now, um, Lyft and Uber go to everywhere that we have a launch location. And I would say a good 25% of our guests arrive in transportation through Uber or Lyft.
that's so convenient. That's it, to be able to access nature and see wildlife just an Uber away is probably unique to you guys, where not a lot of places you can do that. Um,
No, it was really strange when it first started happening.
yeah.
It's not something we're accustomed to seeing.
What should somebody wear? Like, what do they need to show up with for a paddle tour versus what you guys can provide?
Sure. Well, we provide everything you need as far as safety gear and paddling gear. Most of our tours we serve a light lunch, and we always make water available to everybody. What we tell everybody is to bring clothes that they can get wet in. I mean, you never expect to get wet, but paddling is a water sport. And tell them to keep a set of dry clothes in their car. And sun protection, of course, is critical all year.
Yeah, and in Florida, the water's coming not just from being on the water, but you can probably get rained on at any time too.
Well, and it's almost always 100% humidity, so you just
Yeah.
get wet. You get wet walking.
Yeah, that's true. I don't miss those days that I'm in New Mexico right now. I spent a significant amount of my life in Georgia. I definitely have gotten spoiled on the dry weather and the dry heat.
Right, right.
So I'm really interested in your personal experience of years of paddling. How did you get into paddling, and how did you get into the running a business and making paddling your not just personal life but your business life? Talk me through how you found that.
Sure. So I attempted academics, and that didn't fare so well. So I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail, and that turned into 2 through hikes of the Appalachian Trail, and then I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, and then the Florida Trail. So after over 7,600 miles of hiking in 4 years, there's just no way I could have like regular employment. I mean, I honestly tried really hard to like fit in and have a job, but it just didn't work. So I started charging for hikes, and people would call me, pre-internet. They call me and say, "Hey, have you ever hiked the Whites or the Bigelows?" And they'd have a group. So we did a lot of hiking. We did some climbing in Mexico. So that was the majority of our business. But then I broke a knee, had some leg damage, got injured, and I had to keep the weight off my knee. So a friend of mine introduced me to canoeing and kayaking, and it just took off. And instead of working, I just paddled everywhere I could and lived on basically nothing. And soon enough, people just started calling me saying, "Hey, have you done this river? And have you done that river?" And that's how we started. I mean, I wasn't smart enough to come up with a business plan, or, I didn't have an MBA. I just started paddling, and people started paying me to take them paddling places. And we've kind of maintained that the whole way. We don't spend a bunch in advertising. It's just word of mouth. And our business is basically treated as taking our friends paddling.
That's such an amazing story. And don't you wish you were sitting in a corporate office right now?
All right. Well, what amazes me is we actually hire people now, and we have kids coming in that have like degrees from college and kayaking and recreation services, and I'm like, wow. When I went to college, for the weekend I spent in college, they had nothing like that. Now they have college degrees and all these fun things.
That's really cool though, that universities are at least have these options. And I think that passion for outdoors existed within a lot of people, but then you feel narrowed into the few options that a typical university offers. And I see all these outdoor universities popping up, and it's really great to see that those options are there. That hopefully that new generation will work towards keeping up a lot of the work that you guys have put into place.
Right. Maybe
Just
they
getting
can avoid, the need to live out of their car.
Yeah. I don't know. They wouldn't have the stories.
I mean, that's how we all started, man. Dirt bagging it, living in our cars, trying to figure out what to do. So,
Yeah, but
yeah.
there wouldn't be great books written about adventure or documentaries made. It would be a pretty boring life.
Right, right.
So what year was this? How old were you when you were doing the through hike?
I started through hiking in '94, and so I did a 90. Give me a second so I can think it all up. '94 and '95 were on the AT. '97 was the PCT, and then the winter of '97 and '98 was the Florida Trail.
Okay.
I started
And
Adventures in Florida in '95 under the name Into the Outdoors, and as soon as the website started coming in and the internet, when we got Into the Outdoors online, we got a phone call from the lawyers at North Face saying that they own the rights to that. So we changed our name to Adventures in Florida.
okay.
Really
Like, no
quick.
problem.
Right.
So in hindsight, it seems like, it was just kind of the state of flow and everything just kind of happened. Was it really just like that, or was there some struggle in trying to find yourself in like, hey, I really love outdoors. I want to keep doing what I'm doing, but there's no money in it, and there's not a like I'm not making money at the moment. What is if somebody else is thinking about maybe following their passion and they're struggling with something similar? What are some recommendations that you might have, or some of the insight that you've learned through that time of just following your passion?
Well, the biggest thing, the difference that I see now, that the younger generation just getting into it, they have a huge advantage because they can have mentors and there's people out there doing it. When we started doing kayaking tours and backpacking tours, there was nobody doing it. Like, I heard about Outward Bound and they sent out a magazine, but there was no internet. And unless you were in some inner circle, you didn't know those things were happening. And certainly nobody in Orlando, tourist capital of the world, was doing any paddling tours or canoe adventures. So we had to find our way. Nowadays, man, if I was 16 or 17 years old, I'd quit school and go to work for an Outfitters and just learn everything I could and absorb everything I could. Even if I had to live in a tent, it'd just be a really great education. There's so many opportunities now, and it's so easily accessible with the internet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. The amount of useful information just a couple clicks away is mind blowing and probably overwhelming. But just getting started, you have so many opportunities. Whether it's over a summer or seasonally, when during your off time, just go out there. Go work a summer at an outfitting shop, learn if you like it or not, and then learn as much as possible and try to apply that to your own business. So you mentioned something that now, before we started, was you got approached by the city to start an outfitting business, or the county. What was that like, and how does that work in terms of permitting? And did they approach you because they wanted more recreational options? And like, what department do you work with to try to set something like that up?
Sure. So I was actually working for the TDC, the Tourist Development Committee, that works with the county commissioner's office to spend basically the heads and beds tax to get more tourists into a county. And I learned about requests for bids. I never even knew about county contracts and bidding for contracts until I held this position. And after that position ended, I kept an eye out for requests for bids for anything outdoors in the county that I live in. And one came up for a 65-acre park called Wilson's Landing on the Wekiva River, and they wanted an outfitter on it. So I just got on the internet and learned how to fill out a business proposal and how to fill out a request for bid form. And I submitted it and went before the committee. And after 2 years, I got awarded it. So
That's incredible.
it is, for having no experience. I can't believe I got it, because
Yeah, and it's also great to know that the government is focused on outdoor recreation. And we know this because, like, you create a mountain bike trail or you create a paddling experience, and the amount of people that come in, and the restaurants do better in that area, the hotels do better in that area, and the gas stations, and amount of other businesses that get supported through outdoor recreation. And hopefully more and more cities, states, counties focus on preserving our amazing outdoor places, because not only is it great for just that wildlife or that nature experience, it helps the local businesses as well.
well, yeah, and everybody needs a quiet spot in nature. It adds to quality of life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's amazing. And I hope that people, even in and around your area, are finding their, like, backyard hidden gems uh, that they probably didn't even know that existed. So, and probably more than ever last year, where we find that the time in nature is something we all need.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, the one benefit of COVID was definitely everybody getting outside and discovering state parks and county parks and natural areas. Where I live, they've had to increase a lot of parking lot sizes just to accommodate it. So, like, I always believe, if you show somebody something and let them have an experience there, you have an advocate for that land. and better chance of it being protected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you guys are doing in your environmental focus and your the different organizations that you support. Can you talk to us about uh, what responsible recreation looks like in the paddling environment specifically, and some of the principles like leave no trace or other local environmental impacts that you might have to make sure that as people uh, get into the outdoors more and more, what are some ways to protect and not love the outdoor places to death?
Right. Well, the first thing I always tell people is avoid crowds. If you're going to a wild area or a conservation play area and it's just jam packed with people, just don't go there. Find a place that's quiet. That to me, the leave no trace should include, impact the use of the amount of people. If you're going to go on a guided tour before you make a commitment and buy a ticket to go out with this outfitter, see how many people they take out a day. See how much they advertise. If they're trying really hard to fill a lot of seats and they're spending a lot of money on advertising, chances are they're taking out absolutely as many people as they possibly can, which, if you're putting 50 or 100 people a day to go see manatees, you're impacting the quality of life for those animals. And it's hard to call that environmental tourism or ecotourism, and you're actually not benefiting in any shape or form. So you got to be responsible. You got to go where there's less people. You need to go with smaller groups and practice leave no trace. If you see plastic, especially, pick it up. Leave things cleaner than you found them. And don't fall in love with a place so much that you want to buy a piece of land there and put a house up. That's what we're fighting with in Florida. Is people love our remote areas so much that they want to buy a piece of it and then change it.
Interesting. Yeah,
Leave it wild.
that's happening even in the West, where access to public lands and wilderness is becoming harder and harder for the fishermen, the outdoor recreational places. So it's interesting that it's happening in Florida as well.
Yeah, rural subdivisions.
Okay. These are amazing points, and we'll make sure that we do a better job of selecting outfitters that have smaller groups, especially in places with wildlife and considerations that are more than just, the if it's an open reservoir with no wildlife, sure, you could have lots of paddlers out there. But it sounds like when you have wildlife and manatees, whether it's underwater or above the ground, too many people is going to essentially create a stressful environment for those animals that is not very different than being in a zoo.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, the focus definitely needs to be on conservation and education and not excitement and fun. I mean, we do tours in whitewater. You do all the excitement and fun you want. But other of our tours, the focus is just experiencing wildlife and wilderness and, keeping it that way.
Awesome. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing by taking people out in small groups and bringing that appreciation to nature, letting them experience things that potentially are once in a lifetime experience, like the bioluminescence tour, and your hut to hut or lodge experiences and expeditions. So there's so much more for everyone to explore. We'll definitely have a link in the show notes in the podcast to find you on Trip Outside and reach out to you and encourage people to take a tour. And paddling and kayaking is such a great experience. I will leave you with one thing that you could maybe leave the listeners with is what's so special about paddling relative to other sports. If somebody's maybe not considered kayaking or ocean kayaking and different things, what is something that you absolutely love about it that you'd like to encourage other people to try to get into?
As far as paddling sports, it's accessibility. Florida is just a water paradise. If you kept a canoe or a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard on the roof of your car, you can't drive very far and not come across a stretch of water, or a swamp, or a spring. And it's just a great way to discover new places that you didn't even know existed because you can't get to it by either foot or by car. It opens up a completely new world. I tell people it's like when you were a little kid and you snuck out at night at dark, it was still your same neighborhood, but you saw it completely different under the circumstances. And, you feel a little deviant, a little nefarious that like you're seeing something you shouldn't, that nobody else has seen. And kayaking takes you to that place. And you need excitement. There's always whitewater. There's always surf and waves. There's swamps full of alligators, so you can get your adrenaline fix. There's just so many different levels that you can have fun in paddling.
That's amazing. And I agree 100% with that. Thanks for leaving us with that. And I really hope that we can come take one of your expeditions soon and find you maybe across the world. And if it's in Southeast Asia that we can help you with, we go to India often. Maybe we can get something started there.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Yep. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey there, adventure seekers. Thank you for listening to another episode of Adventure Travel with Trip Outside. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share it with your friends, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to stay up to date on where we travel to next. If you felt inspired to travel, go to tripoutside.com. It's the fastest way to book outdoor adventures all in one place.